I'm live. Awesome. I can see that um, the audio is pretty good. The video quality is not as good as my phone, which is kind of crazy. Let's see here. What do I want to talk about this time? Spiral bound Jesus. Um, so after I got sober, um, the reflection is kind of not cool. Um, I was sober for a few years. I went back to Wisconsin, the whole Jesus thing and all of that was behind me. Um, I met this girl, Kelly Marshall. I was really in love with her, um, but I was irresponsible and stuff. So luckily, it didn't work out with her in the long run because she wasn't good for me for certain reasons I won't go into. But she was the love of my life, I thought, and so I lost my job, and I told her I was going to go work for my dad in California, and so I left Janesville, went back to California. As soon as I got there, my dad told me to forget about her, that you can always find somebody, as if people were like clothing you could just pick out. And, you know, but that was just the way my dad thought, I guess. That wasn't me. And then, so anyway, when I got paid by him, he told me he was going to pay me a certain amount of money. And that's the whole reason I went there, was because I thought, well, I can learn the trade. He's going to pay me well. I can send for her. And then he paid me less than minimum wage, and I complained about it. And he told me, well, that's what I'm paying the illegals that work for me. And I'm thinking, oh, so that's what I am to you. Okay. And then I brought up what he had promised me, and he said he didn't remember ever saying that. So he had selective memory. So I realized that he wasn't going to be any help. There was nothing back in Janesville, as far as I knew, for me except her. And I thought, well, maybe I can find a good job out here in LA. So I called my sister Ann, who at that time hated him too, for other reasons. I don't know. I'd have to go try to jog my memory and figure out what that was, but it's similar stuff, I think. She had an apartment in LA, and so I called her, and she came and got me. And so I had some money, and so I paid for her groceries, I paid her rent. Um, and then 2 weeks go by, and I still hadn't found any work, hadn't found a job. And I realized then that I was in big trouble because she was going to lose her apartment, and I couldn't help her. And I was going to be on the streets again, uh, like I worried about in the past. So that's when I started thinking about how I got sober, and how Jesus was there for me. And miracles happen, apparently. But I didn't hardly give it any thought at all. I just didn't want to believe that really happened to me. I thought I wanted to imagine in my mind that I got sober in a more rational way, where I wasn't hallucinating that Jesus saved me. That was my thinking at the time. Um, and um, um, so how can I put this? This is really hard here because I've got cats that are constantly distracting me. But let me see if I can get my focus back here. I was at her apartment, and I realized, well, from my past experience, my mom had gotten food stamps and welfare and all that. So I knew that there was a food stamp place. So I found out where social services was, and I realized I was going to have to take the bus, and it was going to be an 8-hour bus ride back and forth, 4 hours there, 4 hours back, transferring to two different buses, one way each time. Um, so I got off one bus and I had to cross the street to transfer to the next bus. And as I was walking across the street, I noticed that there was like a notebook sitting on the empty bus stop um, bench. So to pass the time, I started paging through it because it didn't look like whoever left it must have left it there, forgotten it. So I'm paging through it, and the handwriting was really bad. It looked like it was a college student who was taking medical notes. I could barely read his handwriting. And then I get to the middle of the spiral bound notebook, and there's this entire page written as if John Hancock wrote it, but even more perfect than John Hancock. It looked computer generated. It was so perfect. All the lettering was exactly the same, like same angle, same everything. And I thought at first it was computer generated. But then I was thinking, well, if someone did this on a computer, how did they get it into the notebook? So, I mean, you would have had to take the notebook apart, put it back together again, and then you would have had to print it to match the notebook's spiral bound as the lines and everything in it. It was, in my mind, impossible. And it wasn't computer generated. Someone had actually handwritten this letter. And it started out, it said, Dear Steve. And I was like shocked. I'm like, wow, somebody has the same name as me. Whoever wrote this to this person, had my name. And said, my father and I been watching you. We love you. We want you to come back to us. My father cries for you, blah, blah, blah. Later on, after this event, a few years later, I actually found a letter just like that in a Christian bookstore, which freaked me out. It was generic, didn't have my name on it, but it was so close to what I saw that I'm wondering if someone else didn't actually get a letter just like mine. But I took the notebook with me when I got on the bus and I just kept rereading it because at the end it was signed Jesus. It just said, we want you to come back to us. My father cries tears, blah, blah, blah. And it said Jesus, at the bottom. And I'm thinking, my rational mind was thinking, it's a gay Mexican guy in love with another guy. But that didn't match with what was written in the letter. Like he's talking about his father. I'm thinking, what? You know. So on the bus ride there and on the bus ride back, I get the paperwork. I bring the paperwork home, and I find out I have to get my sister to sign the papers so that we can get food. And I'm thinking about this notebook and the letter in it and everything. And so I tell her that if she signs this paper, we can get food stamps and we'll have food for the last 2 weeks I'm there. I thought more than likely it would take longer than that. I don't know, but it was a mistake. It was, it wasn't going to work out anyway. But my sister was adamant and just was like, I'm not going to take welfare money. I'm not going to take that. Mom could do that, but I don't take charity from anyone. I'm thinking, oh, who am I talking to? Ayn Rand. But anyway, she she wouldn't do it. So I said, well, what am I going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, we don't have any food. She said, well, my boyfriend will take care of me. I said, well, we're going to lose our apartment. Well, my boyfriend will let me stay at his house. And I'm like, what about me? She just stared at me like, I don't know what's going to happen to you. To be fair to Anne, she wasn't sober that long. She was going through that phase sober people go through when they've been alcoholics and they've been sober for maybe 2 years, where they go kind of insane. I think the alcoholic brain without alcohol can affect you that way. So anyway, so so Anne leaves, and I'm all by myself in this apartment, in this seems like 100 miles of nothing but concrete and buildings, with strangers all around me that I don't know. So I get down on my knees and pray. And I ask God for help. Jesus, I think I asked for help. And then all of a sudden, at the other side of the room, the wall seems to start to waver like heat, like it's in the desert and it's like this mirage, And then light breaks through it. It was the weirdest thing. It was like the world wasn't real, and that this light was punching holes through the other side of the wall. And all of a sudden, all this light was flooding the room, and the darkness I was feeling, the depression I was feeling, and the weight I carried, and was gone. The light came from this man. At least he appeared to be a man, and but he was made out of light, but it was glowing light. And he said, and it was so powerful. The light felt like, when you're at a concert and the music is really loud, and it's so strong that you can feel it through your whole body. That's what this light was like. As it goes through your body, it felt I could feel it. And it was like, and I was in awe. So I got, I covered my head, and the being said, "Don't worry, everything will be all right." And then as soon as he said that, it was like it was gone. He was gone. The power was gone. The light was gone. And for a minute, the room felt empty, but good. And then all of a sudden, I think I was made aware of him. Somehow I was given the sight to be able to see the angel in the room. And because I still had that sight, I could see what was coming in to fill the void when the light left, the darkness that came in. It was like dirty water full of these living creatures, that were negative, like thought forms in a way. It was just horrifying. And I felt this, like what felt like a helmet clamped down on the top of my head to protect my spirit, I guess. And then all of a sudden, when that happened, I wasn't sure what I just saw really happened. Now, when the light was in the room, I suddenly was, God's real. God's totally real. I felt it. I had absolute faith. And then as soon as the darkness came back in again and the light was gone, I was like, did that really happen to me? And I had to hang on to it. I had to fight for my entire life. I had to fight to believe that something just happened after it happened, because this doubt was there. And the darkness that was in the room caused that lack of faith, lack of belief. No. So I said, okay, God said that everything will be all right. Later, I found out, by the way, that a guy who was a Catholic said that, oh, that was Archangel Michael. And I'm like, how would you know who that was? And he said, well, that's what Archangel Michael always says. And that gave me some pause, because I'm thinking, oh, those Catholics have something going on. They seem to have everybody down as to what they do and what they say and who they are. So I thought, I took a mental note of that. I should check that out someday. And so I just kept thinking to myself, okay, something's supposed to happen in order for me to get out of this. Because he said, don't worry, everything will be all right. So I'm thinking, well, what could I do? And I'm thinking, oh, I remembered Kim Spalding. She lived out there. And I hadn't even thought of her. So I looked her up in the phone book, and there was her number, Kim Spalding, her number. So I called it. And I was really careful, because I'm thinking, I need to be really careful that I'm calling the right number. So I was very careful about that. And but when I dialed the number, it just rang and rang and rang and rang. And so I hung up, and maybe that was the right number, but it didn't go to voicemail or an answering machine or anything like that. So I hung up, and I thought, well, God must want me to be more persistent then. So I called again. Phone started to ring again. And all of a sudden, it just stopped. It must have rung like 4 times, and then the ringing stopped. And there was just dead silence. And I'm thinking, phones don't do this. What's going on? And then all of a sudden, there's all this crackling noise and like sparks, electrical shorts or something. That's what it sounded like. And then the ringtone started again, but this time it was a different ringtone. And I thought, well, that's odd. And then this little old lady answered on the other end, and she said, she introduced herself, or introduced her. Anyway, she said, Christian's Traveler's Aid, how may I help you? And I was like, Christian's Traveler's Aid? So I said, well, what do you guys do? And I said, what do you, and she said, well, we're a nonprofit that it's in the bus station in LA, and we help people who are stranded in big cities get home. And I'm thinking, well, isn't that odd? I mean, I called Kim Spalding, but I got Christian's Traveler's Aid instead. And I said, well, you're not the person I called, but you're probably the person I need to talk to. I said, so she gave me directions. I took the bus down there. And I thought, and then she gave me the bad news when I got down there. She said, what we're going to do is we're going to call people you know and get the money from them to send you home. And she said, the Greyhound matches half that. So if we can get up half the bus money to get you back to Janesville, Wisconsin, Greyhound pays the rest. So I was like, good luck with that. She said, well, who do you know in Janesville? I said, well, my mom, but I don't think she has any money. And then there's my dad, my stepdad, Raymond. And there's no way in hell Raymond knew would ever help me, I thought. But he did. And to this day, I'm forever grateful for that, because I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't, because that's why I paid him back right away when I got home, because I just was so grateful. But I honestly didn't think at the time that anybody would loan me the money to come home. And, but Raymond did. Thank you, Raymond. With all my heart, man. Thank you. So I came back to Janesville, Wisconsin with a letter from Jesus. I kept that letter for years and years. I moved to Madison. I went to school for commercial art. I had it with me. And one day I was in the attic and I saw it. And when I read it, I was really conflicted, because I'm like, I don't know what this is. And if it is a letter from Jesus, and I'm thinking it can't be. And there was some sort of force that was like, Steve, get rid of that. So I threw it away. I threw it in the dumpster. Now, you could say, oh my God, you threw a letter away from Jesus Christ. Yeah, I guess I did. In retrospect, I believe that that wasn't me. That was God using me to give that letter to somebody else. I don't know who got that letter after me. Someone did. I do wish I still had it. I would love to frame it on my wall. But I can guarantee you, nobody in a million years would ever believe that God would write me a letter. I mean, why would they? Who's going to believe that I had a near death experience and he sent me back? Who's going to believe that he was there and got me sober? He's not real, right? God's not real, right? And you're crazy if you believe that, or deluded, maybe a little bit simple in the mind. And I was so afraid to tell these stories to people, because I just was too afraid. I thought, I don't want to be weird. I don't want to be the odd man out. And the irony of that is that I have always been the odd man out. And I've always been, I've always been that way. And so my fear of being odd and outcast wasn't worth the fear. It wasn't worth it, because I ended up that way anyway. So it's okay. So make of it what you will. Um, and I know it's convenient that I don't have the letter anymore because here's proof. Here's the letter, right? Um, but I am proof. I'm living proof that somebody sent me back. I didn't do it on my own power, that's for sure. All right. Remember to hit that thumbs up button, I guess, because nobody knows who I am or where I am or whatever. So it would be helpful.